Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're well. You amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. It's Thursday. Thirsty Thursday, and we are continuing on our voyage through the Idaho 4 documents. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who are likely waiting for me to do this video because it's a big one. Now, first of all, we have to say this. I'm about being fair. And it would be wrong of me to claim to be fair if I don't acknowledge certain things. So first of all, let's say what this is, and let's again show what it isn't and tell what it isn't as well. Now, what it is it seems to be proof that Bryan Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife, a K-bar sheath, and a sharpener at some point before the Idaho 4 atrocity, and then in the aftermath of said atrocity, it's likely that he also searched for a replacement. That's what is being stated in this document. We're going to have a look at the document. We're going to have a look at the footnote, which is incredibly important, because what it isn't as well, which is equally as important, is the click activity on its own is not definitive proof of those purchases, but instead it is basically the evidence to support whatever the evidence is that concludes. Does that make sense? So you can't read into the click history doc and believe that as a standalone article is the proof in its entirety of what they're claiming. So, and it's also not definitive proof of Bryan Kohberger doing the crime. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a massive, massive leap towards getting you there, and we have to acknowledge that as people who are willing to give Bryan Kohberger the benefit of the doubt. And I know that there's going to be people who up to this point have given Bryan Kohberger the benefit of the doubt who are likely going to be sidestepping that now. What I will say is, are we wrong to give Bryan Kohberger the benefit of the doubt? No, I don't. And it's also important to understand that Bryan Kohberger, say he bought it, there are questions that we have which we're going to get into in a bit. There is also a fact that it doesn't make everything else that we know irrelevant. Now, I touched on a couple of these things yesterday, which seems to be that there was more going on in the house. There seems to be truths being kind of hidden within the activity in the duration of time directly after this crime apparently occurred. And, is it about self-preservation at that point, or is something else going on? And also with respect of the state and the AT&T advanced timing data, that is being lied about. And they are still relevant. Now, if you missed that live yesterday, do not worry. I am going to be bringing out that as a segmented two-part video that will go over those two specific points. So you can just see that rather than sitting down for an hour going through the live. But most importantly, let's go through this doc. I'm not going to go through the entire doc, just the important part, the footnote, and share some thoughts on it of how this has either changed my opinion or how you should react to it, in my opinion, and what we have to wait and what we have to take into consideration. So here we go. Let's have a look. This is the important thing. So the click data, the rest of the doc is really about arguing about the relevance of the click activity and how click activity can be manipulated if you only give a snapshot of it. For instance, the defense is stating that you can be guided through the process with the AI algorithms on sites like Amazon. So you could, in effect, go on to Amazon to look for a tent, for instance, and that could take you on a journey because it's going to constantly be telling you people who search for this also search for this, and it could take you off on a tangent. But there is an argument there. Of course there is. The AI algorithm, yes, it can give you recommendations, but it ultimately doesn't mean that you should purchase. We also have to take into consideration that this crime took place in the first place, and after the crime, if it's right that Bryan Kohberger searched for a replacement, you've got to then think, what were you doing? But that alone, that also, comes with its issues, which we'll get into in a bit. But let's just read this bit. This is the kicker, if you like. So it says, further, in this case, the evidence at issue is complete. The defendant argues that the data the state has disclosed to the defendant is extremely narrow when compared to the more inclusive and broad warrants and subpoenas. So what they're basically saying is your warrants wanted to cover, say say it wanted to cover a year period. You're covering an entire year in your warrant, but the information you've sent back to us is only a small proportion of that time. So what the defence are saying is you could cherry pick that because you're only picking a small period of time, when in effect, by giving a broader spectrum, giving us the whole data, that could paint a different picture. Whereas the prosecution are claiming relevance. But a lot of that isn't relevant. What's relevant is just before the crime and just after. That's the relevance. So argue that as you will. So here it goes. When to broader warrants and subpoenas, right? But this argument is incorrect. To confirm, the state has disclosed to the defendant all data, including clickstream data, that Amazon has produced in this case. The state narrowly tailored a search warrant for the evidence regarding the crimes of homicide and burglary occurring at 1122 King Road. As I said, this included temporal limitations based on the officer's investigation, which limited the search from March 20th, 2022 through March 30th, 2022. Time it was known Bryan Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife with sheath and sharpener from Amazon.com. I can hear all the gasps now. And November 1st, 2022 through December 6th, 2022, right before and after the homicides. Kohberger's entire click history, items not related to knives and accessories, was not relevant. Without any legal basis, the defendant claims the state cherry-picked specific clicks or purchases out the Amazon click history. This is simply not true unless you consider seeking only items of evidentiary value cherry-picking. A relevant click activity on Kohberger's account would not provide any relevant context to Kohberger's actual click activity, i.e. purchase of a K-bar knife with sheath before the murders, and his click activity indicating a search for a knife with sheath after the murders. So that is what they're basically saying. He searched for one before, searched for one after. And again, there's huge questions around this situation because... let's just get into it. We'll come back to it. Bryan Kohberger's Amazon.com click activity is relevant and admissible. So they just go through this to say it is basically, it is relevant. Of course it's relevant. We've got some people who lost their lives during the search of that. We're saying that we found a K-bar knife sheath with your DNA on it. We've gone into Amazon and... lo and behold, you've purchased one, you've purchased a sharpener, knife sheath sharpener, and then after the crime, you've seemingly gone back onto Amazon and searched for it again. And again, this is damning, but again, what is it, what isn't it? So let's just go to here, right, because this is the important part that you have to listen to. And once we've just gone through that, we'll just have a quick talk about this situation. So this says... the defendant argues that Amazon's recommendation system influenced what users see and click on. Defense motion at 3. But this purported use of AI technology is not relevant. Even if an algorithm might suggest certain products to a customer, the algorithm would not cause a customer to repeatedly and over the course of several days browse web pages relating to K-bar knives, sharpeners and sheaths, which is their point. But we have an even more damning footnote here, okay? This is the footnote that everyone needs to prick your ears up because I'm going to be covering something about this later on today in video 2. So it says, the defendant touches on the issue of identifying the account user making the Amazon search inquiries as shown by the click activity. Defendant's motion at page 4. The state recognises that the identity of the user making the inquiries is relevant, and the state intends to rely not only on the click activity, but also other circumstances to connect the defendant to the original knife purchase and subsequent search inquiries for a replacement knife and or sheath. This will include the defendant's financial activities, the click activities vis-a-vis other events, such as the homicides, a related purchase activity connected only to the defendant, and testimony from witness with knowledge that the defendant purchased a K-bar knife. So that line there, a testimony from witness with knowledge that the defendant purchased a K-bar knife. And again, there's a lot to process here, so I'm going to come back to that in a separate video later on today. So look, it would seem to suggest Bryan Kohberger purchased this K-bar knife sheath. Now, we can skirt around this all we want, but I think you've got to hit it head on. It very much looks like he did. Very much looks like he did. So what questions come off the back end of that? The questions that come off the back end of that is Bryan Kohberger is a criminology student. So you would think that Bryan Kohberger knows what you can and can't do and what does and does not get you caught when you enter into a crime. So this now goes down the route of what would a criminology student like Bryan Kohberger doing a PhD, seemingly smart, why would he go onto Amazon to purchase this K-bar knife sharpener with the intention of using it to commit this crime, then get it, then seemingly handle it without gloves because it's got his DNA on it, they're saying. And what I'm doing, I'm not offering anything affirmation, I'm just trying to process the information and make sense of it, because Bryan Kohberger, if he did this, he has got to be the most stupid person that's ever walked the planet. I can't work it out, because he's literally done every single possible thing there is to do, which is going to get you caught, and he should have had prior knowledge that he was going to get caught, which, it raises more questions as to the motivation behind it. And again, don't think that I'm ditching my support of the guilty until proven innocent, because it still stands. This has turned the case on its head somewhat, and that we have to acknowledge it. Nobody can, if they're right, turn around and ignore this piece of evidence. We can't do it. It would be wrong to do it. So we have to acknowledge it, but we have to understand that it does raise questions as to why would this person do this? Why would he buy it off Amazon in a world that you can acquire these things through other methodology without something like Amazon, for instance, or just grab something. I don't know. It just seems that there's so many stupid things that you should know if you're in this studies that is going to be a problem. You drive your own car, you're getting caught on camera, you're buying the stuff that you're going to use on Amazon. Not only that, but you then go back on there and seemingly go to buy a replacement. So what are we saying? That he's bought it, they can prove he's bought it, someone witnessed, which, again, there's a caveat to that, because the witness could then be problematic, because are they relying upon the defendant to tell them, the witness to tell them the defendant purchased a knife, or is there more proof? Do they have solid evidence? Is there purchase history reports rather than just click activity that would confirm and clarify searches, but then you can't connect the searches to him apart from if the witness corroborates it? There's a lot of questions. Is it a problem? Yes, it's huge. This is huge, and we have to acknowledge it. But it raises... Let me know down below what you think at this stage. I'm going to let the dust settle on it. I'm going to see what other people say and what other people do around this information and see how they push it out. Again, I must admit, it's something that I take in, but I do turn around and say, with all seriousness, this doesn't mean that the stuff that we've pulled up on and we've spoken about is not relevant. And if Bryan Kohberger did do this crime, and it is also true, which we do not know, but if he's saying, has anybody else been arrested, and we think that this crime is potentially multiple people, then are we back to where we was some time ago? And that is that Bryan Kohberger is involved in this crime, but there is more to this crime. What is the motive? What is the motivation behind it? Why was it done? So many questions. Let me know down below what yours are, and I'll catch you all in the next one.